Hello, everyone. I'm Kimberly Guilfoyle, and welcome to The Five. We begin with some very upsetting news tonight. Otto Warmbier, the American who was just released by North Korea after nearly a year and a half in captivity, has died. He passed away earlier after being sent home in a vegetative state by the ruthless regime last week. Otto was only 22 years old. Our prayers go out to his family and to all who loved him and prayed for his safe return. His father, Fred, fought back tears Thursday while holding a news conference on his son's release. He didn't hold back his anger at North Korea, however, for terrorizing his son.
He was so brutally treated for so long. There is no excuse for any civilized nation to have kept his condition secret and denied him top-notch medical care. There's no excuse for the way the North Koreans treated our son.
Truly heartbreaking and outrageous. President Trump addressed Otto's passing this afternoon.
And I just wanted to pass on word that Otto Warmbier has just passed away. He spent a year and a half in North Korea. A lot of bad things happened, but at least we got him home to be with his parents, where they were so happy to see him, even though he was in very tough condition. But he just passed away a little while ago. It's a brutal regime, and we'll be able to handle it.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson helped bring Otto home, and he issued a statement earlier saying the administration holds North Korea accountable for Otto's unjust imprisonment and demands the release of 3 other Americans who are being illegally detained. Greg, when this news broke today, obviously it's incredibly heartbreaking to imagine what this family has gone through. They weren't even able to receive word of their son for over a year's period of time, and then to learn that this fate had befallen him at the direct hands of this brutal regime. I don't think there can be any peace for them for what has happened here to their son, and there really shouldn't be for any of us as Americans because of what transpired.
Yeah, it was really a year and a half month execution and torture. It was a cruel prank to play on grieving parents. And the only reason why they returned him, I would imagine, is because they didn't want him to die in custody. And you might think, oh, maybe that was out of compassion or fear. They just didn't want to pay the bills. I think it is just they dumped him like garbage. And there has to be a way to make them pay. And I've been thinking about this for a long time. You know, we have this executive order banning assassinations. Rewrite it. I mean, that's a first step. Kill them so it makes it look like natural causes, so there, you know, it removes confrontation and perhaps opens talks with somebody else. Or you do the other thing, which is what we have been doing, which may be the only solution, which is you just kind of like let it go and you treat North Korea like that weird house in your neighborhood that your parents say, don't go by that house. Whatever you do, don't go in that house. It's a strange family. They do weird things. Steer clear across the street. Don't go near it. It is the weird haunted house on planet Earth. And you don't go near it. You just wait and wait and wait until time, maybe the guy's heart gives out. Natural causes, who knows? Yeah. Something.
So obviously, Dana, Kim Jong-un, a brutal dictator in North Korea, and the blood of Otto Warmbier is on his hands. Right. He bears the responsibility, and his regime does, but I think something needs to be done about it, because I don't think this guy, I think he's too dangerous. I don't think we can just wait for him to expire from natural causes. But we've also, I think, if you talk to them in national security, think this is our biggest concern is North Korea and their nuclear proliferation and the abilities that they currently have.
Indeed, because unlike when we were kids, the house on the corner that nobody wants to go by, that shouldn't go by, now has nuclear weapons. And so it has to be dealt with in some way. And I sent an email to you guys earlier about, you used to talk about Iran wanting the nuclear weapons and that there were 2 clocks. There's the clock of Iran trying to get it, and then there's ours, which is how long are we willing to put up with it before we stop it. And President Obama tried his way. I don't necessarily think that is working. And now we have a situation that's probably even more dire and more sinister, at least in the near term. One of the things that Secretary Tillerson said is that it was unjust imprisonment, but he didn't go as far as to say that the North Koreans are responsible for the murder of Mr. Warmbier. Now, Marco Rubio, who is on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, he said, make no mistake, Warmbier was murdered by the North Korean regime.
True.
So that clock on our end, there will be pressure to try to speed it up. I think that President Trump is well guided by Mattis, Tillerson, McMaster, and lots of other people, but also that we get to the question about what do we do with China, and the question of how long are we willing to be patient with China before they start doing something. There was an article in the New York Times over the weekend that says that basically they're just slow walking the pressure that President Trump asked them to put on North Korea, that they're just sort of like waiting. And so I think that's where you'll see the next step is Tillerson probably pressing through China.
Accelerating, yeah, and plus we have leverage in China in so many things, especially trade. There's things that they want, well, there's things that they're going to need to do, and we deserve justice for an American that was murdered at the hands of North Korea.
Yeah, we need to accelerate all pressure on China in order to solve this problem. Make no mistake, this was an act of war, and I think President Trump needs to respond accordingly. It was premeditated, it was savage, it was humiliating, and it was depraving. It was disgusting. And what happens in a hostage situation? You know, when the guys start killing the hostages, that's when the teams go in and take action. I don't know if you have to do it overtly or covertly or what, but it's not just this. When they're test firing missiles, when they're trading in illicit arms and drugs and, you know, causing chaos with their neighbors, something has to be done here, because right now, I guess a coup is potentially on the table. They have these war games in South Korea, a decapitation squad or something like that, where if anything does dust up on the DMZ, what they'll do is, you know, they'll take out some military installations, but they'll also go after the leadership in a very targeted and effective way. There was reports that some special operators were doing the war games with the South Koreans. There's I think it was the USS Michigan, one of our attack subs that's off the coast there that often helps transport the SEAL Team 6 guys. So, you know, that's on the table, and I think Kim needs to understand it is on the table, because I think President Trump, and I haven't ever seen him that disturbed or emotional in a very long time during those remarks right there. I'm sure he takes this personally.
Of course. And,
you know, he had a huge hand, and his team did, in bringing Otto back. And now that success is really tarnished. So I really want to see a very stern response.
That's the problem. Juan, more should have been done earlier to get to this point. The wait-and-see approach ends up in deadly results like this, and an ending that is unacceptable in every way.
Well, that just brings us to a really important point, which is that you still have about 20 prisoners being held by the North Koreans, Kimberly. So, you know, Greg said it kind of in an explicit way that, you know, they dumped him. I mean, they were getting rid of him. It's not that this was a result of anything that wasn't being done previously. The pressure has been put there, and I think President Trump has put more pressure. He tried to get President Xi of China to agree to something. He thought that meeting in April that Xi had bought into the idea that, you know what, this is a dangerous situation for the globe, for the world.
It is.
And that President Xi would take action. Well, he hasn't taken any action, despite the fact that Trump has held off on claims of currency manipulation and other steps that he could be taking against China. He really thought that he had an ally, and so far that ally has not acted. Even people who are on the border with North Korea and China say there's been nothing done in terms of stopping the trade that continues to feed money into this dictator.
They did stop the coal shipments. That was a big success of the diplomacy by the Trump administration.
I don't
coal
see it making any difference.
Powers that economy in the north.
Well, I don't see it making any difference. And to me, you know, let me just stop here and just stop with the politics for a second. What Fred, his dad, said today about how when they brought his son home, that he could tell that the child could not speak or hear, apparently. But just in terms of his countenance, the father said, he could see that that boy was more at peace knowing he was back at home in Ohio. And I just got to say,
when he had arrived, when he looked anguished when he first saw him.
It just hurt my heart to think of a dad in that situation on Father's Day.
You know, can you imagine that, going through that and probably thinking, you know, this is the last time that his beautiful son, who had so much promise, was so well loved and regarded by so many, will be greatly missed. You know, with a bright, incredible future to provide and give back to this country, and to be murdered like that by North Korea, it is so grotesque and so unacceptable.
And they kept it secret from the family.
Yes, I know.
They didn't know that he was in this condition. I mean, they were trying to reach out to find out about their son, and they couldn't, and they had no idea he was in this state.
They were denied any consular access or information, and the information now that we have is that he fell into this, coma, and then eventually the state of, unresponsive wakefulness the day after he was sentenced. So 15 years hard labor.
I would just add that, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to add that, North Korea, one of the things that Kim Jong-un says that he wants is to be treated with respect by the world. And yet there are norms around the world for humanitarian cases. They were all ignored in this case. There was no response to any of the consular requests. There was no responsiveness to the treaties that are signed in terms of how do you deal with people around the world. And remember, they treated our citizen like this. They do it to their own as well. There's a complete disregard for innocent life there.
Greg, you had a comment.
Well, I was just, after the Leon Klinghoffer thing, Reagan sent those F-14s and intercepted the Egyptian airliner that was carrying the hijackers. It was a pretty decisive thing to do. I don't know what the equivalent is there. I do know that when growing up with the Cold War, there was mutually assured destruction. Russia knew that we could kill them, and we knew that they could kill us. The difference is with North Korea is that we can kill them, but there's a 50-50 shot with them, and generally it's more about the people around North Korea that you worry about. So we're hamstrung in the sense of what do you do in a retaliation with brute force. So what is it left? And that is covert or strategic maneuvers. Seems like the only way to go.
And one of the last things I'd like to say is I think in Syria what got President Trump to act finally were those images of the children and the mothers that were gassed by Assad, and that spurred that barrage of missiles. This might be one of those same emotional moments that might cause him to take more dramatic action.
Well, and he would be more than justified in doing so, is the point, because of the murder of this young man that we mourn tonight. Otto, you are in our prayers, along with your beautiful family tonight. May God watch over you and them. Rest in peace. Back in a moment.